Good morning, everybody, and Merry Christmas. It is December 19th right now, but we are taping this for what is that going to be? The 23rd. So it'll be Monday, December 23rd when this is going up. And we're pre-recording, which we almost never do. I think we've done it like twice before, just around the holidays when people aren't going to be around, namely me, when I'm not going to be around to do a live stream. So we miss you this week, but here we are. And for today, we wanted to kind of do a bit of a recap of some of our recent conversations that we've had on the live stream, as well as a roundup of a few viewer comments that stood out to us. And so happy Monday, everybody. I am Leslie Elliott Boyce. I'm joined by Jennifer Friend, Deborah Knox, Christine Siefenwalk, and Jenny Holland. And it's lovely to see you all today.
You
Really
too.
to see you too.
Yeah. So, Deborah, do you want to start us off with the intro to Solid Ground?
Yes, which I have not memorized and may never make myself.
We should make you ad lib it.
I feel like it. Solid Ground is a peer support community for anyone concerned about the imposition of critical social justice and/or authoritarian measures such as COVID mandates in their workplace, university, children's school, or community. We offer weekly online peer support groups in which members share ideas, thoughts, and support for how to navigate the impact of these ideologies and answer the question, where do we go from here? You can join one of our groups for $5 a month. That's going to be good till the end of the year. So join us if you want to join us right away. To find out how to join our community, please visit solidgroundsupport.com. And please note, Solid Ground does not provide psychotherapy or legal advice, and nothing we do should be construed as such.
Great. Thank you very much. Yeah, membership is increasing as of January 1st to $20 a month, still a steal. And there's a discount for an annual membership. So do check us out, and we'd love to have you join us. So what stands out, either a viewer comment or a thought from one of our recent conversations? Does anybody have anything that's jumping out?
I have something.
Okay.
My very last minute perusal. So our chat, if last week or a few days ago, whenever it was, with is it Jonathan?
Jonathan.
About
Van Maren.
porn.
Mm-hmm.
What was his last name again?
Van Maren.
Jonathan Van Maren, which was so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just looking through the comments from there, and one person said, so Findbridge 1790 commented, why does he think the bad actor is always male? Very distorted. And this is actually something that I've been thinking about a ton. And I think we even talked about it maybe last week, especially with the Lily Phillips debacle and a lot of other stuff, a lot of online commentary. And in the turf wars as well, really focuses on the male. I think I brought this up actually in regards to someone I was communicating with on Substack. But I think that women in general in our contemporary culture are really given a huge pass and get to escape a lot of accountability for bad behavior that they actively participate in. So that's my very un-Christmassy opinion.
That's interesting. Yeah.
To piss everyone off. So yeah.
Well, people also, I can't remember if I have the comment, but sort of tying to that, and I don't know what the numbers are on the porn news, say just porn, men, women, but someone was pointing out if it hadn't been like for 50 Shades of Grey and women interested in that BDSM category. Now, I don't know if what they're going and looking at is going off to these extremes that we're sort of getting as maybe happening to the male targeted audience, but someone was saying like, hey, like women are consumers of this too. I don't know whether they're having any addiction problems that men are having, but they were sort of like it's not all just a total male tiltness.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that before we abandon Christianity altogether, and I think in Christianity there was too much of a focus on the female guilt and responsibility, and tended to put the blame on the woman for like sexual misbehavior to a fault. But we've completely done away with that altogether, and now it's almost as if a woman can do no wrong. But in reality, there needs to be the balance, because women very much in all aspects of life have a tremendous amount of agency, especially now when we don't have any sort of legal obstacles in our way. But even before, when we had legal obstacles in our way, we still had a huge amount of influence over families and culture. But now it's like we don't have, we're given a pass as a sex class, and our victimhood is always assumed, and our motives are always just assumed to be pure and just, and men are treated the opposite way. Now, obviously, there is the truth is somewhere in the middle. Women are capable of deviant sexual behavior. Women are capable of just regular desire that then is complicated as it always is. So I would like in 2025, I would like women to take a little bit more responsibility.
That's an interesting take. I tend to hear a lot of criticism of women in general in sort of online discourse, and a lot of like one of the things that I've sort of responded negatively to is the Jordan Peterson, this is all women in the managerial classes, kind of like this is just rampant over mothering gone mad, so this what overbearing mother archetype.
Yeah.
And I kind of I every time I hear one of the arguments that either project blame onto men or project blame onto women, I think they're going in the wrong direction, because
Yeah.
it's really both. I mean, we're people, and I don't think that one moves without the other moving. There's just different levels of responsibility. Like the Lily Phillips thing. I wonder if people responded a little more with concern for her and condemnation for the men involved, perhaps, because it's perceived as a sort of self-harm when
Mm.
she's doing what she's doing. We see that as like, wow, she's gone crazy. It's like a person out beating themselves and giving them lashes, or doing
Mhm.
crazy amounts of drugs and being sprawled out on the sidewalk. Sort of, I think she's pitiable in the way that a person whose life has gone off the rails is pitiable, and the men involved are treated with more dismissive condemnation, because what it's seen as is a passing exploitation for these people who remain anonymous. Their face doesn't go all, they don't sacrifice their anonymity in this
Mhm.
act. They just pass through and do something rather debaucherous.
Yeah.
And maybe it would be different if they were being filmed. I don't know, but I wonder if that's the reason for the disparity in that particular instance in people's perceptions.
Well, actually, what you said, I think is true, especially to do with the focus on the longhouse and the managerial class of women in the devouring mother state. So it actually made me refine slightly. Maybe what I'm getting at is I don't see that much criticism of women's excess from other women. And maybe hearing someone like Jordan Peterson say it over and over again, actually, I agree with you, it can be grating, even for someone like me who is quite thick-skinned. Um, like hearing men say it is almost it does sometimes like veer towards the sort of incel territory, especially online.
Mhm.
There's a lot of horrible incel misogyny there, definitely. But maybe what I'm saying really is that women, older women especially, need to be the ones kind of stepping up and offering a kind of a corrective analysis to stop the worst excesses of promiscuity and hoe culture and porn culture. I don't see a lot of that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Um, I I was really taken aback. Was it, I guess it was this time last year? Do you remember after the Gen Spect conference where Phil Illy came in a
Mhm.
dress and there was that eruption? That was kind of my first e encounter with online sort of feminist groups. And man, it was ugly. It was really ugly. It was a defensive, crazy mob that was very persistent and very hell bent on reputation destruction, just crazy stuff. And And I've had the other thing now. I've been online on Twitter a little bit more over the last couple of years, and I've seen the nasty comments from men, and those are really hurtful and ugly as well. But there was this pack-like persistence to the online feminist behavior. And it's interesting. It is interesting. But yeah, I don't know where would you want those. Also, I sort of feel like the online thing, when we talk about like what people are saying and what people are doing, I feel like we're in Plato's cave and we're looking at the shadows on the wall, because this is all, it's a petri dish. It's not real life. This is just what a group of people that hardly anybody knows who they are, but we all know who we are. And so we have this like weird clique of internal popularity among ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're looking at the same voices talking about the same things,
Yeah.
and we get really riled up about it, but it's shadows on the wall. And so I don't know how much that's really reflective of what people think and what the world is like anymore.
Yeah, it probably isn't very. It probably isn't. I know. Anyone else want to jump in on that?
I think there are wheels turning in Jennifer's head.
I don't see Jennifer.
I'm thinking, oh, really? I'm
Oh, there you
thinking of, I'm thinking about, what is the young lady's name? Is it Lily Phillips? Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
You know, I watched that documentary about her, and I find her personality so pleasant. Like,
Yes.
I really, really like her. And I'm very curious about her. And there's something about her where I don't feel judgmental or condemnation towards her. I feel um, curious and interested. I wish I knew her. I'd actually really like to hang out with her and kind of understand more why she's doing what she's doing, because it is so extreme. And she looked quite shaken up after her experience. You know, she looked fragile. She looked like she was going to cry. Um, and I, you know, found myself feeling protective towards her. And then I heard she's going to do something like sleep with 1,000 men or something. So I don't really know what's driving her. I don't know if it's some kind of compulsion. I don't know if she has some kind of trauma in her history. And I also don't want to jump to that conclusion, though, and start, you know, pathologizing something that I don't know more about. But I'm just interested in why this, you know, why this extreme behavior. And yeah, I don't know. I kind of feel too like, you know, in our last episode where we were talking about the you know, pornography, and then we started talking a little bit about kink. I do realize that what we haven't had is someone to come join us for one of these conversations and kind of explain more about the psychology behind kink.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really curious to know more about it, because I think it's easy to get caught up in, oh, this is a really weird act, and why is somebody fetishizing this act, and why are they so obsessed about it? And it's not my area of expertise, but I did some reading about it because some of my clients were talking about it. And it seems to me that for some people, certain acts that render a person very vulnerable help to forge a very intense emotional bond.
Yeah, trauma bonding.
So yeah, it could be. But I would love to hear somebody really really explain more about that experience, because I'm lacking in understanding about it.
Do you know, I think that that's a really good point. And I think when you're speaking to the psychology of something, it's very different than speaking to the philosophy of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I tend to sit on the philosophical level with these things, thinking that the psychology might mean a lot of things to a lot of individual people, but what we've got is kink and sex positivity that's gone to the political. And now we are, as a culture, sort of tolerating and promoting and engaging in a normalization of things that on the philosophical level aren't moving us towards human flourishing, where there might be really meaningful and interesting or psychological components that explain why individuals in their private spheres might engage in certain things, and that's for them to do, and that's for them to work out. And as long as people are not feeling hurt or hurting each other or having, criminally impacting one another, then maybe that's nobody's business at all. But on the philosophical level, what I'm really stunned by is the normalization of these things to the point where we have what is it? What is what's the word for denormalization and marginalization of the conventional or the vanilla.
Yeah. And I'm not in favor of politicizing the personal. That is extremely distasteful to me. But I do understand also that these things can kind of form kind of a cultural political movement. Like I don't like the idea of queering things, queering education. It feels like people going in with an agenda. And I don't, believe in that, but I am really interested in understanding people and
I know exactly what you mean.
Having real like inquiry and I think it's hard to understand people and love people if you're automatically coming from a position of judgment, and this has to be bad. I want to know what these things represent for the individuals.
You said that because I was thinking about that I wouldn't want to out of hand dismiss like particular proclivities people have or explorations or trying, perhaps engaging in certain, I've seen people use this more to work on psychological parts and do some integration in some of their sexual activity and play. And but to me, it is, this should not spill into the public sphere, much less be everyone told they should be doing it or something like that. Right. Like when it's a matter of where's the intimate space and where's the, public space, and keep those very clear bounds. And then there is the place where it is verging on just very bizarre, like trauma inducing, repetitive, like trauma bond, like you're saying. It's like, there's lines there too about things people might be engaging with. And where is that just something that's looping that no one's getting anywhere in terms of some growth or development or anything. And it probably isn't helpful for them to be doing it. So I'd be up for having somebody talk about that.
I just had a weird thought that popped into my head as you were saying that. What if for somebody so it could be like what Leslie was saying, creating trauma to bond and having trauma bonding. But what if something is actually healing of trauma and somebody is creatively using sex to heal a trauma? Like, what if somebody wants to be, I guess they call it like impact or something, like, which I don't really like that term, but what if somebody like wants to be like smacked or slapped or spanked, and then after they want to be comforted? Maybe they're not trying to create a trauma, maybe they're trying to actually heal a trauma because they're having that part of themselves held by a loving, safe partner. And so maybe there is actually something healing and positive about it, and people are too busy fetishizing the act or condemning the act to have inquiry into why that might be.
I will say really quickly, just going back to the philosophical, I wonder, what does it mean when we use sex for our own self, rather than as a vehicle of connection to another person? What does that say if sex is just a thing that we're using for our own healing? That means we're using another person in the most intimate way possible. And I wonder, while that might be healing for the individual, is that violating something greater?
I think it's interesting and I talk about academia a lot because I think that academia is sort of where a lot of this stuff starts and filters down, especially at the graduate level. And what I'll say about that is there was no pathologizing of fetishism when I was teaching, and that's not what the sex positivity movement looks like in schools and what they're teaching young and up and coming therapists to look at it as. There's no pathologizing of it. If anything, they're pathologizing the more conventional ways of having sex. And I'll give you an example. One of my office mates, when I was there, was teaching a human sexuality class, transgender male, and somebody, I guess, brought up heterosexual sex, like between a man and a woman, something that's, the very conventional, traditional, like missionary position. I mean, all of that. And the class erupted and basically said, you don't have a right to talk about that. We're here to talk about all of these other sexual, activities and behaviors that we support, and that is it's not inclusive of everybody. And that went on the teacher's evaluation. So she ended up, well, look at that, he ended up having to take that part. So, and it was responding to the student because the school took the student's side. So that teacher had to remove that portion out of the teaching and out of so no white male, sexuality was taught. It was everything that was fringe or fetish, and that was normalized. And so from my lens, I feel like that it is very bizarre, and that's the stuff that starts to filter down into just the daily, worlds that we live in with our partners or the people that we're involved with, romantically and otherwise. So that's, I think, very jarring.
Yeah, it's kind of like the sort of real, I think, hatred towards, cis het, which just those words sound like insults, sexuality, the hatred towards that and resentment towards it. And yeah, I do find that concerning and strange.
Mm-hmm.
Did I tell you guys about, I think I've talked about this. It's really personal, but a couple of years ago when my 13-year relationship to the man that I wasn't legally married to him. I called him my husband. He called me his wife. We were sort of common law married, but we were together for 13 years. And the way that it ended was that I intercepted a text on his phone when I was going to hand him his phone because his alarm was going off. There was a text displaying on the screen, and it said, "Hi," his name. This is her name. "I just really think we have something special, and I would like to get to know you better outside of kink. If I'm going to throw the ball in your court, I'm putting myself out there for, something bigger with you." And so I had seen that. I took the lady's number. I called her and talked with her, and she didn't know that he was in a relationship. And she was perfectly nice. And once she realized that that was the case, she was really forthcoming. And she sent me just a ton of screenshots of all the stuff that how they had been interacting personally and on these forums where they'd met. And she was a trainee therapist. And I think she was at the school that I went to, the one that I called out. She was.
Small world.
Yeah,
Wow.
I know. And it was while I was putting these videos up about the school, and I was like, oh, wow, this is like so weird. But her talk about not wanting to yuck his yum and wanting to be kink positive, and the reason she was doing this, I mean, they were in this, I don't even want to give it airtime, but like this specific kink that they were in the forum together to meet each other and meet up with people to do was partly because she was trying to be more sex positive. And she used a lot of therapy speak, a lot of this kind of language. And she's a young woman. She was in her 20s. And it was really interesting how she was really actively pushing herself to be sexually engaging with people that she wasn't that interested in, and to do activities that she was trying to like more.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fueled by this like therapy-esque, this push to be more open sexually.
Those are the kinds of conversations they have in class, and those are the papers that they write. They write about very intimate. That's one of the assignments. And the Antioch campuses are pretty much similar across the board, even if they're in different states, right? So I worked in the California one or in the LA one, and you were up in Washington, but it's very similar material, and it's across the board the same curriculum. And that's part of it, is that they actually have you do a history of your sexual partners, your sexual behaviors, and you submit this to the professor as like,
Good
as
Lord.
as a
Talk about
reflective
trauma
piece.
bonding when you've revealed yourself like that to someone.
No, you don't. Oh, no,
Imagine
you don't.
that.
I would not have some professor jerking off to
You're
my
right.
sex life.
Yes.
Thank you
Yes.
very much.
Yes.
I would make stuff up. I'd be like, I'm putting gerbils on my ass.
That's a very 80s, 90s
Yes.
reference, 70s reference.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh, that
And
was good to hear.
spiritual communities too. Like I've been in various spiritual communities, or just even thinking you're on the path, and especially even to say a Buddhist even orientation where you could have like, well, aversion, like aversion is bad. So then you might tell yourself, well, I'm going to do this thing, and I'm just practicing to like work on my aversion, and I'm going to try poly even though I don't want to because I think I'm too attached. And so there's all these, that's like another domain. There's like this psychological training, and then there's certain like spiritual schools where if they're not reminding you like it's okay to have a boundary, it's okay if they'll think I'm being egoic, so I should just be really uncomfortable and just kind of say yes. So that goes on in that domain too.
Yeah.
The common theme here seems to be like I mean, it's beyond just wearing down your boundaries, which is we've talked about a lot, especially with kids and grooming and schools and stuff. It's even more than that. It's even deeper than that. It's like almost like this entire demographic of like educated, it's like third level educated um, Americans is actively seeking what do you call it, like almost like self-destruction, or like to like
Violation.
flagellation and punishment, and like I mean like this, it's so strange. Like why would you submit yourself deliberately to discomfort in service of some idea like that? Like I just find that to be really alarming, actually. Like where, like these people, like obviously the four of you, notwithstanding, you did push back, you did reassert your boundaries, but how many other people are submitting to this and saying like, yes, I am basically a huge piece of shit, and I deserve this, and I deserve to be punished, and I deserve to be like mind raped, and I deserve to hate myself. I mean, they're doing it on this front of sex and on the front of race. It's wild.
But some of it is self-aggrandizement though. Like I don't even know there's the recognition of harm. There's like, I'm more spiritual, I'm more developed, I'm more, whatever. So I think that there's, at least on the front end, there's some sense of a gain, and not like I'm just hurting myself.
Right.
Like, and then, but there is like, to let yourself go that far, you are, but
like all those polyamory videos about getting over your jealousy and being,
Yeah.
how you're fueling that to become a more elevated person.
I mean, doesn't it all just seem like a perversion and a
Yes.
a warping of traditional morality? Like,
Yes.
because in traditional morality, you were born sinning, you were born imperfect. Well, Christian morality, maybe just Catholic morality, whatever. But you were born flawed, and it is only through the moral teachings of the church that you can even hope to become less flawed. And you're never going to be perfect. You're never going to actually ascend to the highest tier. All you can do is make your way through life, hoping, trying to redeem your inherent flaws. But it's in the service to something that now seems much more benign to me than it would have 10 years ago, because it's been replaced by these sort of secular ideas. Like you'll never, if you're a white person, you're inherently never going to redeem yourself in the face of a black person. That to me is a deep perversion and toxification of religion, where religion does eventually offer you
Redemption.
not redemption through Christ, but also it offers you a way to have guardrails to live your life in which you're going to do the minimum amount of harm to other people around you.
Mm-hmm. and Henry agrees, or Elliot.
That was Henry. Hey, you're starting to recognize. You're starting to be able to differentiate between their barks. That's pretty good, Leslie.
That's cute.
This was a comment that was on that same episode, the one about porn. Hey, I'm going to play some games, says. The real big eye-opener for anyone struggling with pee addiction should be this. Why would they give it away for free? We pay for water, electricity, all of the most basic needs within the confines of structured society. Why in the world would they give anything away for free? That should immediately make everyone think twice about watching it. Thought that was an interesting, good observation.
So people don't have to pay for like
drug dealer that gets you hooked with samples.
Do
Did
people
you,
have to pay for Pornhub? I don't even know. Like, people pay for OnlyFans,
no,
right? I'm imagining, but for
Yeah.
Pornhub, do you pay, or is it it's just free?
if my understanding
No,
is that
there's
you can
tons of
pay to
free.
download
Ads?
videos, but
There's ads.
mhm,
Yes,
ads.
there's a lot of ads. And women tend to get paid a lot more than men in porn too, which
Yes,
I
that's right.
find very fascinating. The men get a fraction of what women make as adult male stars.
Mhm.
Same in modeling, like, high
Yes,
fashion model.
yes,
Is that fair?
It's value.
Equitable?
It's
Is
market
it?
value.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I mean, the
market
women are the ones
value.
that you're watching mostly, right? That's who
That's
I
you're
mean,
looking
right.
at.
female beauty is the apex. Like, female beauty is the apex of everything.
Mhm.
That's what people pay money for.
That's an interesting comment, and that kind of gets into another thing. I'll read another comment and we'll see
Yeah.
what you think. Chloe Grobler 4275 commented on another video that I did. It wasn't a solid ground. It was something about transphobia, I think. And she said, in your description, when you say trans identifying men, in quotes, do you mean men pretending to be trans or just trans women? If it's the latter, I'm not sure there can even be a conversation done in good faith, lol. And I said, trans identifying men equals men who identify as trans. This is said without judgment in plain language. And this went back and forth a couple times. So Chloe said back at the Radical Center, so you're saying trans people aren't what they claim to be. I hear an attempt at empathy in this video, however, you missed the mark. Most of this video centered around very much not passing trans people, while you don't really acknowledge those who are sincere and make huge changes in their lives to conform. I get that this is about sex and not really gender, but trans women aren't showing genitals in bathrooms, kind of like how cis women, I assume, aren't regularly showing their genitals. And I responded, no, they aren't what they claim to be unless they claim to be trans, because trans implies the discrepancy between the physical reality and the target desire. Again, no judgment intended or implied, just speaking plainly. And so there's like two more back and forth. So she said, just say it plainly. Trans women aren't women. They are men who think they're women. Just say it. And I
Yes.
said, I don't know what they think because each human is an individual and I can't presume to know their thoughts or assume that they're the same despite a shared demographic. Trans women are men by definition. I'm not sure what your point is. And then somebody else came along at the very end and said, your misogyny and sexism is showing the Radical Center.
Oh my
So,
God.
but that's
Oh,
an interesting, that
wow.
was a back and forth about the language here, about not, I have I've been struggling with how to conceptualize this idea. I have sympathy for an individual person who is dealing with gender dysphoria in the way that they're trying to deal with it. How do you grapple with that as a person? What is your thought process? Just like when you were talking, Jennifer, about kink. I mean, I could sit with somebody who's telling me this is what this means to me and this is how this works in my life. Even if they're
Mhm.
saying I use other people to get this thing to resolve this thing in me. I'm sitting with a person talking about this. I'm not judging them. I'm listening to them. I'm with them. But when we're talking about it on a political, conceptual, philosophical level, I have a very different analysis of it. It's like, what is this movement? What are we talking about when we're arguing about what language means? So
Yeah. It
anyway,
doesn't scale. It doesn't
yeah.
scale. That's the point. That is the entire point. And this is something we've talked about going back like maybe a year or even two. I forget when the first time we had our chat about my parents' unconventional, what probably now called almost poly, at least open marriage. It's like it works on an individual basis. It can be sometimes, not exactly, but sure, fine. People like, what are you going to do? Like tell people how to live their lives. But the problem is, it through these programs that Christine and you guys were talking about, and through the internet, the just like exploding discourse on the internet, it's not only become normalized, it's become almost an imperative. There's actually social pressure to participate in that. That cannot be. That cannot be. Because not only does it harm people, it's going to lead to the very opposite reaction, which is a shutting down of all freedoms. Like, because I, like you, think if what you do in the bedroom is your business. I have a, if I come to find out about it, maybe I'll have an opinion on it that isn't favorable. It doesn't really matter. But the internet
Right.
has made everything go to scale. And we're trying to upend not just social norms and laws and expectations, but language itself, grammar itself. And if you start to mess with grammar, you can go fuck yourself as far as I'm concerned. Like not happening. Like I am not changing my grammar to accommodate your feelings. I am just not going to do that.
Yeah.
You know, it's like OCD or something. But it's just a problem of scale.
I am the grammarian about whom your mother warned you.
Not ending in a preposition. There you go.
My gosh. You know what I don't get? Just from a standpoint of eroticism, I don't know why you would want to normalize something that's a little transgressive, because isn't the fun of it being a little transgressive?
Exactly.
Like, ooh, we did this thing. Now if it's like, you better do this thing, and if you don't do this thing, if you don't own a butt plug and you're not pegging all your dates, you're really, really boring, and maybe you're a little misogynistic, and you know, I mean, come on, like let's leave some stuff a little naughty, so that we have room to have fun.
Yeah. It's like all the advertising, right? If it's supposed to be just blatant in your face, you look at it. I mean, if you're just walking by a billboard or something, you go, that's just not sexy, like at all. You know, it's just.
Yeah, we've lost mystery. We've lost mystery. We don't care about mystery. It's scientific, it's evidence-based, and everything has to be, you know, on the surface.
Even worse, it's bureaucratic. Nina Power, who talked to Benjamin, I think a few weeks ago or months ago or something, and who I did the panel with me at this London event, Battle of Ideas, she about this topic of like transgression and where's the line, and it was based off something I wrote. And she's a fascinating woman, and she was talking about that. It's like this bureaucratic management of desire, which extinguishes desire. And also bureaucracy tends to lead to horrors as well, like as we've seen in Nazi Germany. Like if your attempts to regulate everything and make sure everything's okay, weirdly and somewhat, you know, unexpectedly, maybe if you it seems counterintuitive, but those attempts to micromanage and control things for the better tend to lead to terrible outcomes, like truly terrible outcomes.
You know, I'm imagining a scene where it's like, you know, like the Chinese restaurant, take one from column A and two from column B, and you have like this list of kinks, and you can go, okay, I did it right? Like,
yeah, exactly. I mean, these poly couples have like spreadsheets for like their activities and stuff, and I'm like, oh my God, I am bored by this. Like, you literally sound like such a dork. Like, that's not hot.
That's not hot. That's not hot. And I personally, I want the government out of the bedroom. I want institutions out of the bedroom. I don't think you need to go into schools and tell, you know, teenagers how various sexual accoutrements work. But if the government is in the bedroom, I want them saying, no, don't do that, because that's much hotter.
I was wondering where that was going.
Yeah, that was another person made a comment about you, Jennifer. We get
oh no.
Oh no. What did they say?
Oh no.
Jennifer friend, you make me laugh really hard sometimes.
Oh,
so funny. I love it. And that was from Opalescent Micah. And that was actually on a conversation that you and me and Jenny had a while back. They were digging into the archives on beauty, aging, motherhood, and plastic surgery. Yep.
Where did the year go? That's what I want to know. What happened to 2024? It just vanished.
I know, in thin air. Any other thoughts on that one, or do you want to read some more comments? I have one more. Okay. You want to do one? Yeah, Deborah.
I mean, again, it ties into the male, female, and it was something I was trying to bring up with Jonathan, but I think he thought I meant the right versus the religious, because he made a response to, well, this is what's happening on the right, and I meant about going towards Orthodox religion. And this was from Patrick Barnes 9874. I find the comment Jennifer Friend about it being particularly hard for women to wait for marriage because it will be next to impossible to find a husband interesting. The Orthodox Church has been growing since COVID at an unprecedented rate. Families and single men are embracing the church's philosophy of standing firm on historical faith traditions against the postmodern world. But single women aren't showing up. We have a men's association that, among other things, runs classes and accountability groups for maintaining sexual integrity outside of marriage. I've heard on multiple occasions marriage-minded single men warned not to expect to find family within the church and told instead to look for someone outside the church with compatible values. The problem in the large majority of parishes with Orthodox Christianity is a lack of marriageable women rather than marriageable men.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think I think it's probably the most direct cause of that is the women becoming more liberal and progressive and men becoming more conservative. That's probably the number one thing. But it's hard. It would be very hard. It's hard for me even, for a modern woman, raised, including our generation, and certainly on down, to accept that kind of oversight.
Mm-hmm.
I'm becoming, like, with every passing week, like, more religious, I suppose, but I haven't taken any steps to actually join the church because I still find, like, the thought of, like, confessing to a priest really odd and, like, not, I can't quite get there. Never mind super progressive young women who are, suffering from a terrible lack of wisdom anyway, and who think they've never been told that they're not actually that bright. I can't imagine how they would ever submit to a structure in which they have a very bounded place, which is like, okay, you have this role in your family, and the man has this role, and then above you is the church, and, like, everyone stays in their lane.
Mm-hmm.
But that's going to be very hard for girls. Very, very hard for girls. I
Jenny,
think
one of the things that you said, sorry to cut in, you weren't finished.
No, I just said men maybe take to it more naturally, but what were you going to say?
Like the hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things you said in a conversation, I don't know, maybe a year or more ago, with you and Jennifer and I, we were talking, and you talked about, it might even be that one that comment was about, a sexual arms race.
Yeah.
And I love that because it really encapsulates a feeling that I've felt as a woman over my lifetime, pressure to do things that I didn't necessarily want to do, because if you don't, then you're not competitive. I mean, one of the, like, women don't necessarily wear makeup and dress in a certain way for male attention. They do it because they have to in order to be relevant. They have to in order to fit in with the groups that they're in, the society that they're in. If they don't, if everybody else is dolling themselves up and you look, you're totally plain, then you fall out of the running. So that kind of goes to what I think, Jennifer, you were talking about in that comment that the viewer was commenting on. Anyway, too many layers of wordplay. I need a grammarian. Where's my grammarian? But the sexual arms race, the idea of the competition between women for relevancy.
Yeah. Well, that's Lily Phillips. All like, she is the ultimate example of that. I mean, somebody posted, I used that phrase again the other day in Substack, because somebody posted a link to a story about, I think it was a Hong Kong woman or a Singaporean, or a woman called, like, Anna Chong, who did 100 guys in one day.
God.
Or 110 or something, or 97. Anyway, it was like almost like they were, like, vying to break the record, and the person said, like, oh no, everyone's forgotten about her because Lily Phillips has come along and broken her record. This is the problem. But the problem is that women are actively participating in this sexual arms race, and they do, in the short term, I think, get a huge amount of gratification for it. I just think it's shallow. And they're gonna have to wait until they age. I mean, not like really age, but even just a few years, and maybe into the next decade, that they start to realize the toll it takes. And then,
I think that's the thing. It's in the moment. I mean, because you age out of this kind of industry, you age out of it.
Yes.
And therefore you are no longer relevant by the time you hit a certain age, and you're not, I mean, there's some niche, sexual interests, like people that, men that like women that are 16 older. I mean, there's a lot of different niches, but for the most part, overall, you age out of a system like this. And I think that's Jenny, what you were saying is where the damage then starts to really appear.
Yeah.
is because you're no longer, you can no longer define yourself based on those
Right.
kinds of behaviors.
But even for the women who aren't the professionals, even just women who live normal lifestyles, which now normal lifestyles includes like pretty heavy promiscuity,
Yes.
then like that, like you start to reflect and you start to really second guess yourself. Then you put that in the context of like the Orthodox Church, which is like, as far as I understand it, like stricter than the Catholic Church, I think. Um, how do you integrate that whole like common culture of young women who are, in the churches
Hmm.
are supposed to be settling down in their 20s? They're
Hmm.
not, that's like an impossible integration. I don't know what the solution might be there. I really don't.
What do you make of the lifespan sort of cycle of perspectives on this? Like if you hear women who have been in sex work, prostitution, this is where it's most intense, but I think that this is the case for a lot of women, where there's different perspectives on promiscuity at different points in the lifespan. So you get
Yeah.
like here we are, a group of middle-aged women, and we have whatever thoughts we have. Maybe we there clearly we have individual differences in our perspectives, but we also can recognize that we're in a different place than we might have been when we were 20.
Yes.
And um what do you make of that? Because are all of those perspectives equally valid? Or, and this is another person on Twitter was actually pressing me. Do women have a responsibility to constrain other women? And I think, well, I don't really think so. I don't really think anybody has a responsibility to constrain anybody else. I think we all have a responsibility, a very deep and important responsibility to constrain ourselves. But
Hmm.
I don't think that we necessarily like women going out and like bossing other women around. But if you
Yeah.
constrain yourself, then you are modeling constraint and that thereby ripples outward. I don't know. But what do you make of the lifespan thing? The perspective shift.
Can I just say though, because this is the second time it's come up. So when Jen was talking about Lily Phillips and how she found her very interesting and wanted to know more about it, and then when you just said what you said about should women constrain other women? I mean, I think to some degree, actually, yes. I think older women have abdicated a role of moderating younger women's wilder impulses, which are hardwired into many of us and are not new to this time. They've always existed. But older women, literally our age and older, have abandoned that role of judgment. And when Jen, when you were talking about Lily Phillips, and you were saying it really, and I completely understand. She seems like a very sweet person, actually. I agree with everything you said, but what I thought was like women need we need a female Jordan Peterson. That's what we need.
Hmm.
A
Hmm.
woman of a certain age who speaks to younger women who are
Mm.
growing up in a really messed up culture
God,
and are just
yes.
acting on their impulses, and you can't really blame them because no one's there to tell them to make their bed or whatever our equivalent would be. Brush your hair.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
keep your legs closed.
Hmm.
Right, right.
And then,
And so
don't.
much, but as like warning them about this is like the pain of this is like it's actually not worth. I don't know if I'd want to judge them. It's like, but just sort of
Yeah.
say like, let me tell you what you can get and what the quality of your life is going to be if you don't do that.
Yeah,
And you do
Louise
this.
Perry's book really did that. It had that ring
I
to
think
me.
so.
I
Yeah.
gave that to my daughter, and I would, if you have a daughter or if you have somebody who's a young woman in your life who is trying to figure herself out, how she fits in with the sexual arms race, with what her sexual morality is, I totally recommend that book. It's very non-judgmental, but it's how we got here and a lot of the pressures that women have been under. I think it's very much, it strikes that tone, but I totally agree with you about
I'm
that.
even thinking about how I was in my 20s and the group that I had in my 20s. I think it was really encouraged and
Yeah.
kind of praised to be promiscuous. Like
Yeah.
that was you go out together, you're bar hopping, and then you go home with somebody, and then the next day you do your big debrief at brunch. I mean, it was a whole tradition, right? And so that was something that, made us feel like we were connecting,
Sounds
right?
like
Those
I mean,
were
Sex in the
fun
Sex in
City.
the
times.
City,
Yeah.
Sex in
that's
the
exactly
City.
the
I know.
part
I
my
love it.
friends.
I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah,
And
It
and
was
that was
fun.
and
and
there
it
there
was.
is there is a fun to that. And I just have to say, people think like, oh, guys and their locker room talk.
Oh yeah.
No one can
No.
dish the dirt like women.
Yeah.
Nobody. I mean, we're drawing dicks on napkins to show our
Yeah.
friends what it looks like. Like,
Yeah.
no, all you guys that think you're like such badasses because you're going, yeah, I hit that. Her
Yeah.
friends know what everything
Yeah.
looks like. So seriously, look out.
Right.
Girls are just as bad. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
worse. We're so much worse because we're more verbal and we share more. We're more
Yeah.
communicative. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, zero boundaries.
I know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is. It's fascinating. There's so much room for deeper discussion around this. I wonder there does seem to be, maybe we can come back to it at some point, but something in the story arc, Christine, your point about how women age out of the the prostitution aspect, pornography, sex work, etc. But women also age out of a lot of the attitudes and look back on them differently. And I do think that what you're saying, Jenny, is very interesting. And at the same time, we have the advent of the Karen. So any woman who cares about what other people are doing socially is invalid and to be mocked. So we've got as you say, there's room for the older woman to come in with her voice of wisdom, but we have this cultural parody of that exact thing that's really taken hold over the past few years and caught fire. So it's very hard to know what your place is.
Again, it seems like if you're living a life that is, I don't want to say you have to be cool to have this message, but if women are looking at, wow, I love how that woman is sitting in her own skin. I love what life she's having. Like, you wouldn't necessarily find it as Karen-y, I think, if you just looked on this person. You don't think like they have nothing better to do but be going like this. They're like, I'd like to be like her. I think that then it's easier to give the message and it isn't being so, like that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. One
I'm just
more.
kind of thinking about who I would have actually listened to at that age when I was in my 20s.
Yeah, that's a huge question, isn't it? What do you think?
And I don't, probably my older sister, but that's more about the fact that her validation of me and my behavior was so incredibly important. And she was not somebody that was promiscuous. She got married very young. She's been married to the same man for, almost 30 years now, and they didn't date much before. So she never kind of lived that life where you go out and you're trying to figure out your sexuality is developing and evolving and all of that. She didn't go through phases like that. But that would have been the voice in my head that may have broken through. But that's because I valued her opinion, and she validated me as a person in a lot of ways, more so than my own mother, actually, in a lot of ways, which is a whole other topic. But that would have maybe been somebody that would have gotten through. But I was not going to be that honest with her because I also didn't want to hear it at the same time. So I think it's very challenging to find who that person or who those women would be that would be able to kind of make a difference in pointing out some of this behavior and asking hard questions, even if you don't have the answers to them yet. But somebody there to do the asking of those questions. So that's what I was thinking about. But I know you had another comment, Leslie, you wanted to get to.
To what you were saying about the validation being really important. And that makes me think also about this push in psychology programs and education to destigmatize things and normalize things.
Yes.
And there's this real big anti-shame movement. It's like shame the shamers. Shaming will be shamed. And the thing, even with like pornography, this is where I've seen this a lot, is this group of what did he call them, the porn profs? Jonathan Van Maren was talking about this, how there's the sexologists who are very visibly and out there pro porn, speaking in academic jargon, writing papers, doing studies. There's this big push. One of their bigger themes is that it's not addiction. and your porn habit is not a problem. It's your shame over it that's the problem. If people would stop shaming themselves, it's like it's your internalized white supremacy that makes you not accept CRT. It's in your internalized shame that makes you have a problem with your porn habit. Your porn habit is perfectly healthy. And so what is the deal with that? What is the deal with shame? When has it gone too far? When does some aspect of that serve as an appropriate guardrail? The lack of validation, if you're talking about like an older sister, if she says, "Oh, I don't, honey, that's not okay. Why don't you respect yourself a little bit more?" And you're like, "What? What?" And you get the feeling that you've just been judged, but is she shaming you, or is she guiding you? And where do we cross those lines?
Comes back to the language again. It all circles back to the language and the words you use and the connotation of the language. I think. The language, the tone, I mean, the way we communicate in general. I think that's what sets it apart. I mean, the shaming versus the, trying to help you see your worth and know that you're worth more than that. So that's what I would say.
Yeah. I sent did you see that Lily Phillips had this is back to her, she's just kind of the poster child for this discussion, but that ad for 1,000 men, and she was recruiting them, and I emailed the email address that she put on that, and I told her that I thought she was a lovely young woman and that I hoped all the best for her, and I don't think I said anything really condemnatory, but it was kind of like a gentle, oh, I hope you realize that you don't have to do this. You seem like a wonderful young woman.
She literally seemed in that documentary to not know like basic biological facts. Like she literally said, "Is like, oh, is that how you get HIV?" You're like, "Oh my God!" Like that woman was crying out for a strong older woman character. And I kept seeing online like the people referencing that her mother was her money manager, but she had never said that in the documentary. So I don't know what.
Yeah, I didn't see that either.
I don't know how true that is.
In fact, she said her parents don't know that much about what she does. They know she generally does sex work, but they don't know that much. Yeah.
But they also are like polite and don't want to get involved, and they're like respecting her choices. And you're like, no, that is not the role of a parent. The role of a parent is to slap you upside the head and be like, absolutely not. It's like the same thing with a lot of the trans parents. Like, oh, well, maybe I should just let no, you have to show strength. You have to show.
In this era of estrangement, there's so much, you feel kind of, it's difficult.
But I would 100% be estranged from my child before I gave him my blessing to transition. 100%. I would take estrangement over that. I would never be able to witness that. But in Lily Phillips's case, she's like, oh, I didn't know that you get HIV from unprotected sex. You're like, wow, you're like a little child. Like you're like a lost little child. I think you truly believe that you're enjoying this. And there's no one in your life that has the balls to tell you what you're doing is actually quite tragic and wrong, and you need to stop.
Well, I only have one ovary, and I can tell you that. Well, so any final thoughts or any other comments you guys want to bring up before to kind of wrap up?
Just that it's been a great year chatting with you ladies. It's really made my year.
Well, and thanks for having me on. I haven't been on long, but this has been already such a wonderful, enriching experience, very enlightening. So I appreciate all of you.
I could share, there was one really positive, we can congratulate ourselves. No, I just want to find it because it was a really nice, positive comment about how the show, is that bad if I do that?
No, it's good.
This is
Did they say we look pretty?
Didn't say that. Don't argue with idiots 7459. I don't know if there's that many of those. It was courageous podcasts like this that encouraged and added to the discussion over the last few years in ways you all may not even realize. I felt real fear discussing these issues in an open way not too long ago. Now, not so much. The best way I can explain it is it felt like being gay in the 1950s. Perhaps I'm not explaining this all very well, but I do, capital D-O, want to convey that your voice has forced the door open. Not everyone needs to be Joe Rogan to have an impact. Every little bit counts. So thank you.
Oh my
Wow.
gosh,
my
that is
God.
lovely.
That's
Wow.
That's
incredible.
amazing.
That's
That's
really
Oh my
nice.
gosh, I
amazing.
want to hug that person.
Yes.
Literally the
Lovely.
best comment I've ever heard.
That
Yes.
is really nice.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Well, I appreciate you all so much. I appreciate these conversations and your all of your different takes on different things. The different you each bring a your own element to these discussions, and it wouldn't be the same without you. I'm so glad, Jenny and Christine, that you've been able to join us, and
Thank you.
it really enriches the conversation so much. And Jennifer and Deborah, I love having the chance to talk with you every week. And
And
what
there's
is your
Max,
what
the
is
criminal.
Max? So Matt, we have Max, Elliott, and Henry to thank for the
Oh,
occasional
we,
bouts of excitement
Four-legged
and
friends.
enthusiasm.
yes.
And thank you to everybody who participates. We have this core group of people who we tend to get about these videos get about 1,000 watches, somewhere in there. Sometimes one of them will like catch more people's attention, maybe something about the title or what we're talking about, and we'll get more. Sometimes they'll get a little bit less, but we seem to have a very core group of people who enjoy connecting with us through these conversations, and that's really who I'm chatting with when we have these. I'm just delighted that we can share this time, and thank you all so much, and happy
Thank
Merry
you.
Christmas. And
Merry Christmas.
yeah.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
All right. Thanks, everybody.